G'day and welcome to Talking Aussie Farming. I'm your host, Jono Weinstock from FarmCap, where we fund Aussie farmers. I've really been looking forward to today's episode with Oli Le Lievre, founder of Australia's #1 storytelling podcast in agriculture called Humans of Agriculture. Ollie's probably not being used to being on the other side of the camera, but he's here with us today to talk about his journey. I've got some notes. Everyone listening to this probably already knows Ollie. But like I said, leading storyteller of ag, probably bigger than Landline in my view, with the amount of viewers and listeners with, I believe, over 200,000 downloads a year, over 500 episodes recorded. That's only 480 more than me. So, a lot of stories around Australia. A bit about Ollie's background. Grew up in the city, which is probably where the curiosity came from, but has worked on farm, jackarooing around Australia and overseas on Canada. I'm sure he's got some great stories to tell. Studied at Marcus Oldham, has worked in ag tech to Auctions Plus to Big Four Consulting. So what a journey already, and has won some awards. A previous finalist in the Xander McDonald Award, which is a very important award and recognises young leaders making a difference in the sector. Humans of Agriculture, we're here to talk about today. And it's not just a podcast anymore. It's actually growing into a massive platform to attract top talent in the industry, which we're going to talk about. Ollie, welcome to the show.
Jono, thank you for that, mate. I'm privileged to be here, so thanks for having me.
Great. You're a hard man to catch. We're both traveling around the country, visiting farms and chatting to interesting people. So I'm very grateful to have you in the studio in Melbourne.
Mate, it's very nice to be at home. I'd say, yeah, on the road quite a bit, like yourself, but chance you get to walk the dog in the morning, go to the gym and wake up in your own bed's a privilege.
Live a normal life. And how do you feel being on the other side of the camera for once, being the interviewee?
Yeah, Jono, I think it's interesting. I'm really excited, actually. I think we've got some pretty exciting things happening in our business, and I think lots of learnings for me personally. So the chance to actually sit down and talk to you about it, and I think, yeah, for me to be able to listen back and go, wow, kind of like how I said that or didn't like how I said that will actually be a really good exercise. So thank you.
Now, it's about connection and curiosity, probably a similar theme to what we try and achieve in our show. And where does this curiosity come from?
Yeah, it's a good question, John. I think, well, I'd say it's like I'm just a naturally curious person. I know one of our great family friends. I grew up in the outer suburbs of kind of northern Sydney, so really fortunate with our childhood. And one of our neighbours, she often tells the story that when there was ever like a tradesman or someone at their place working, I'd just always be asking, but why? But why? And so I think this curiosity has always been kind of innately me. I think I've always wanted to learn and really understand people. And I think, yeah, I've found this vehicle, obviously over time in agriculture, where there's just some of the best people in the world that you can kind of come across doing really important work and, yeah, really clever, interesting businesses. So I think, yeah, curiosity, I'd say it's probably my #1 value in terms of what I think adds value. I think, you can, if you're naturally curious, if it's in a conflict situation, you're actually there trying to understand and uncover. That's something I talk to our team about a lot. But then I think also if you're curious, you kind of start to wonder about what's possible and what could be different. So it's a pretty powerful tool.
Yeah, totally. It definitely comes across in your interviews, that's for sure. Now, you didn't grow up on farm. So let's talk through your background. I believe you've got some family farming interests. So keen to understand how a city slicker from Sydney, I'm from Melbourne, gets so passionate about agriculture.
Yeah, I wrote down only something over the last few days where it was, I was working with a business coach and she was saying, well, where do you want to be in 10,000 days, which is 27 years? And I was like, well, actually, how did I get to where I am today? And kind of looking back nearly 10,000 days in the other direction. As I said, I grew up in Sydney, but I'd say very fortunate that mum's family are in farming. My closest relatives and the ones that I really got to grow up with farm sheep and cropping down here in Western Victoria, just near Winchelsea. And I'd say for me, that's always felt like home. Like I remember as a kid, mum had dropped me off at Sydney Airport, walk me to the gate. Flight attendant would kind of collect me, take me down, we'd jump off at Tullamarine, and my uncle would be waiting there to pick me up. And and then it had come to spending a couple of weeks on farm and going home at the end of the school holidays. And as a 12 or 13-year-old, I just remember I was gutted when it came to heading home, my poor parents, but I was gutted when it came to going back to Sydney because I just loved it and I just wanted to be a farmer. And I think whether it was watching Troy Dan on TV as a kid. Like I just, lived and breathed it and always thought about being outdoors working with animals was something where I wanted to be.
Great. Well, that's some pretty cool school holiday experiences. Not your average city boy gets to have, I guess. Now let's go into the humans of ag. So I guess what inspired you? It's been going for a long time now, since 2019. It's a lot of episodes and a lot of conversations. Yeah. How did you get into it?
Yeah, it's a pretty long story. I guess
Yeah.
if I just look back, like if I take a step back and look at my career, Jono, like I think for me, so I left school and went jackarooing straight out of school, found my first job in the land newspaper. Actually went and worked on the same farm with another jackaroo, a mate from Sydney. And I think for me, like that was living the dream. That was the best thing in the world. And then a couple of years on farm, came down to Marcus Oldham here and studied agribusiness. And I think like coming into that course, I thought like, yep, I still want to be a farmer.
Mhm.
I know I'm probably not going to ever own a farm, so maybe farm management. As I started to go through Marcus, we went on a trip in 2014 to China, and I just remember like vividly and pretty confrontingly seeing like, wow, this is supply chains. This is what kind of the world looks like outside of my very small bubble. And I just became fascinated, I think. And I remember like sending dad emails at all hours of the night and just from Hong Kong
Mm.
being like, oh, dad, we've been into this supermarket here in Chengdu in China today and we saw this and like imagine what could happen for Australian ag products like on the shelf here. And if we could tell the stories of the Australian farmer, like would that be interesting? And yeah, this is how much it's selling for. So I think that probably like piqued an interest where I went, to me up until that point, agriculture was kind of always farming. And then I went, wow, there's actually a commerce side and a business side of the industry. And I guess that fascination started to fill me. And so when it came to leaving Marcus Oldham, I really wanted to go and explore what was out there and start to take kind of the road less traveled.
Mhm.
I went into, like I probably wanted to go down that commodity trading pathway. I think I looked at going, oh, well, yeah, you hear stories. Someone goes in, becomes a grain or meat trader, retire at 45, and you
Right.
go,
Or go
wow.
broke. Yeah.
Yeah, and they must earn some money.
Yeah.
And I think so, yeah, like I guess really naively wanted to open up opportunities down that trading pathway. But an opportunity came up to go and work in fresh produce, exporting asparagus of all things.
Yeah. Right.
And again, that was that fascination of like a 24-hour supply chain, picking the product here in Pakenham, getting it into market in Japan or Korea,
Mhm.
holding up passenger planes. Like it was just this world of ag that
Mm.
I started to live and breathe. And I'm taking a long way to answer your question, but I think it was all these different experiences that I started to see that as I got to kind of towards 2018, 2019, I kept hearing the same conversation in our industry. And it was like, oh, we just need to tell our story better. And the way that we have been traditionally telling our story is facts and like, this is how we do it. This is how much rainfall it takes to grow
Yeah.
a kilo of beef. To be honest, it's pretty boring.
Mm.
And so I looked at, what do the best storytellers do? And I looked at, well, the thing that's drawn me to agriculture is the people and the passion that people have if they're growing, trading, moving, whatever it might be. And I thought, well, what about if we just start leading with the human first? All the facts and the important information actually will back up that human, but allow people to talk to why they're involved in agriculture and to take more of a step back and really open up, I'll say, our peripheral vision to look at, well, if you produce, move or consume, you can be involved in agriculture. And it's that whole supply chain and that it actually needs in order to get, to grow really sustainable and high quality food for people. And everyone has a role and that there's a lot of conscious decision making that happens the whole way along that chain.
Yeah.
But
That's
who
right.
are these people?
Oh, it's fascinating. I guess your eyes were opened early from seeing the whole supply chain. And you're right. I mean, we visit farmers all the time, and until you've turned up and met the people um, and get a feeling for their whole history, generational farming, and what they're doing today and why, you get a real it kind of the whole picture of what's going on. And there's a lot behind the crop that's come out, life on the land and the history. So it's very fascinating. Now it's clever branding because Humans of New York went berserk, telling stories through art, I think initially back in 2010. And so podcasting, everyone's got one now, including myself, but back in 2019, it was still pretty fresh. And so great timing and leveraging off a worldwide phenomenon. So marketing genius as a young budding entrepreneur, which has helped, I guess, hopefully capitalize on that theme. But in that time, you've interviewed 500 guests, some really insightful guests from every aspect of ag, like you talked about, supply chain to farming and everything in between. What are some key, I guess, I mean, you've probably got so many examples, but, a few stories that have come to mind that have really inspired you or, taken you?
Yeah, it's an easy question to answer. No,
Really?
it's incredibly difficult.
Yeah.
I would say, well, I've done 500 long form interviews,
Right.
but we also do some for other partners. So the Australian Rural Leadership Foundation, I host their Rural Leaders podcast, and also GRDC. But on Humans of Ag, I think we're up at about 370. So
Gotcha. Okay.
500 in total, but 370 on
Gotcha.
ours. Yeah, where do I start? And I would say, like, the podcast really, like, to be totally transparent, and you touched on it, Humans of New York, really, like, that was the whole piece of lead with the human. People are fascinated by humans, and we can open up this world of agriculture to people far more broadly than just, I'd say, talking to the niche of ag. And yeah, the podcast probably came about, and it was really a learning opportunity for me. So the first episode I actually recorded in Feb of 2020, and I was really conscious about, I didn't want myself to be the center of attention in it. And also, like, at that stage, we just tried doing it as a social media page, like blog posts and things. But the podcast really was like a genuine curiosity of, like, who's out there. And when I look at agriculture, I would say, and I don't think I'm that unique, but, like, I just thought the way of who we talk about being part of our sector, we often don't bring them to the front. Like, farmers are a key cog in what happens, but then also so are the chefs. So what can we learn from them? So are nutritionists, so are the marketers, the traders, all these other people, the truck drivers, these passionate people that sit the whole way along. And so for me, I really wanted to learn from these people. Like, how does a chef think when it comes to sourcing produce, and what actually matters to them, and how does it go? And so I think, like, if I think back to that first episode, Mark LeBroy, one of the founders or co-founders of Three Blue Ducks, renowned and I'd say ahead of their time in terms of going the whole paddock to plate philosophy, trying to grow as many veggies as they could in the back of their store in Bronte and serving it to people in the eastern suburbs of Sydney. And he talked about, probably being like anti-corporations in a way. And so they started to look at, well, how's it been grown, and what are the practices, and what's going into it, and how do I get closer to sourcing from that farmer if we can't grow it ourselves? And then the thing that I think has stuck with me till today was he was talking about, you can have all these people do this really important work the whole way down the supply chain. But if it gets into the hands of a chef and a chef doesn't care, or if the chef stuffs up the meal, the consumer's going to have a really bad eating experience.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
And so that kind of, like, just as one example, that triggered in my head, and I go, wow, the chef is such an important human of agriculture, and we often don't bring them into the conversations. And then Steph Getty's a nutritionist. Again, this is like a conversation from 2020, but, like, we see these, the importance of health and well-being, and ultimately what we eat being who we are, and what our microbiome does in our gut to then shape our mental, or play a key part in shaping our mental well-being as well. So it's like this fascination that we don't necessarily talk about in ag, but all these people are equally passionate about their area. And when we start to bolt it together, it becomes, fascinating conversations. And our industry ultimately goes from being farmers and producers and people who work directly in the supply chain to being all these other, I'll say, ancillary services that sit around farming and agricultural communities that are such a core part of getting really high quality food that farmers obviously go and put all the effort into growing, to making sure that it can get to consumers in a way that they, one, want to eat it, and two, that it is done in a way that's good for them.
No, totally. I actually went for a nice steak in Paran yesterday, and one of our staff is actually a former butcher. And I said, so, just the passion in meat, one from the butcher, I find really fascinating. But also, I said, how do you think the chef feels if we send the steak back? And he's like, nah, they take it really personally. Everyone's got a slightly different view. So it just took me by surprise at how, like you said, just how passionate the chef is about what is cooked, and the feedback. It was phenomenal. So you're right. Now, I guess, were there any guests that you've interviewed over your journey that have just blown you away, or just surprised you? Anyone?
Yeah, well, I
mind?
think, it'd be remiss of me not to say, like, Clancy McKay, extraordinary young bloke, I think, at the time. So that was maybe 3 or 4 years ago. He was studying at Marcus Oldham, and was this, I'll say, this kid. He was in his late 20s at this stage, but had lived 5 lifetimes. Like, he's just, I would say, just on any platform, is a remarkable story. The fact that, I guess, he trusted me enough to sit down with me and talk about his life and loss and losing his dad and those different really hard things that people go through, but then also how he found meaning and purpose and things out the other side. And I don't hear from him much nowadays, but like we have the odd conversation. I had his brother on only a few months ago. And so, yeah, I guess like Clancy's episode stood out because I think there was just so much of the human kind of condition tied into one episode. There was this kid who grew up on a cattle station in the territory with no running water, no power. Parents said, okay, we need to give these kids a better education. So they packed up their kind of Northern Territory dream at that time and moved closer to Gundawindi, I think it was, and went to school and had this, challenging kind of childhood and ultimately ended up, going down a different pathway. I think he went to Longreach Ag College, but then his dad was an incredible stockman. He inherited this incredible stockmanship. He went to the US on a rodeo scholarship but then also at the same time, like, his dad was diagnosed with, I believe it was the skin cancer, became fairly aggressive. And so, I think you have all these, stories where people can see themselves in different aspects of Clancy's story, but then ultimately at the end of the day, that comes back to family and the things that matter. It's a hard, I think it's a hard conversation to go past as being a standout. But then, other ones, Grace McLeod, who's now a great friend, farmer from, I think it's near Caniva in Western Victoria, but now lives up in the Northern Territory. Met a bloke who was also a guest and a really good mate, Munro Hardy, and they run a Cape Adue, a tour business out of Darwin Harbour. But she went through family succession and poor mental health within her family, and she ultimately decided that she could help alleviate some of that pressure by making a decision to step away from the family farm. Ultimately, like one of the hardest decisions anyone would ever make, but it then opened up opportunity, one, for her parents to pursue what it was that mattered to them. And I think she's just one of like the all-time incredible humans. And then you look at what happened over the kind of the next 18 months of her story, and she met Munro, and the rest is kind of history. And I think that's kind of the nature of agriculture. Really good, genuine people. But
it sounds like just the rawness and vulnerability and just the real nature of people's lives. And that's, I think, what makes it special, and it's part of what I love about working in this industry. What about some of the impact some of these stories have had? Have you're sharing someone's story to a global audience. Have you seen any significant impact that it's had as a result of publishing some of your stories?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. Like, and I think in agriculture, like we're operating in a niche. So I'll be honest, like I'm not really that interested in downloads and things. Like we get a few. I think it's the conversations, and I'll get some feedback normally every time something's released from my mum. She'll give her 2 cents on the episode, which I absolutely love.
Biggest critic.
Yeah. And also cheerleader. No, but I think, it's the conversations that the guests have. Like I think when someone has the chance to talk about their journey and what they've done and what they're kind of doing and where they're trying to use their career and their opportunity in ag to steer some sort of direction and outcome, it's the people that come out of the woodwork for them and the days or the weeks after where people listen to those podcasts. I think that's pretty powerful. But I think there's probably, there's 2 examples that are front of mind for me. And if I was to say, like, if we were to never do anything else again, like I think we can hang our hat and say we've made a difference. And the first, I think, is we know there's a loneliness epidemic across society, agriculture even worse. And we got a message one day from a young lady, I think, who was working on a property somewhere in New South Wales. And her feedback was that sometimes the voices of myself and our guests are the only other voices she'll hear in a workday. And so the fact that I think it's an outcome of we never started a podcast to have that impact. The fact that we get to give her company, keep her occupied, and make it feel like she's got other people with her in what could be a really lonely kind of day as well is really powerful.
That's brilliant.
Yeah.
It's very meaningful.
It is. Yeah. And then there's probably, one other. We did a series with, I think it was maybe 2021 or 22. I guess mental health is something that I very personally care about. I've been to more funerals from people, especially men of all ages, taking their own lives than I would care to admit. Like I would say it's probably closer to 10.
Goodness, and you're only early 30s yourself, is that right? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's horrendous, yeah.
And so I think it's how do we use our platform to do something good? And I really, one for myself, and I guess it's that curiosity, was like, oh, I'm going to go see a psychologist and see, what's up here and where am I at? And I'd say I started that probably 3 or 4 years ago. It's been the most beneficial conversations that I keep coming back to regularly. And what I really wanted to do with that platform was use it to model the behaviours that I would love to see my mates and my friends really take up, and strangers obviously in rural Australia, because we lose too many people young. And I think, when it comes to doing a series around mental health, making sure you can have those real and honest and inviting conversations that hopefully help one person. And off the back of that, we definitely know that we helped one person who reached out for help at a really difficult time. And I think if that's all we ever did as a podcast, I think we can say we've done a pretty good thing.
No, totally. It's something to be very proud of. And a recent guest, we had Steph Trethewey from Motherland, and talked about her impact with rural mums and helping work with those mental health challenges with women. So, no, it's very noble thing to do and something to be very proud of. Now, just on the lighter side, what about some quirky or funny experiences you might have bumped into along your journeys? You've travelled to far and wide to some weird and wacky regions and probably met some colourful characters. Any stories come to mind?
Yeah, we went out to when the Collie Hotel a few years ago was going gangbusters on Instagram and I don't even know if TikTok was the thing then, but Tom from Collie Hotel, Tommy Hancock, we went out and visited him and call it a live podcast. But Tom just decided that he'd start drinking sevens of rum and Coke while we were recording. So it was a hilarious. He's already a funny enough bloke, but after 2 or 3 of those, became a very funny conversation with a lot of editing. And yeah, I don't know. I think it's just the places where people show up. Like I got stopped. I was in Japan a few years ago. Got stopped on the street by someone who listened to the podcast from Queensland. That was cool. And then had the chance to go like to Weeper at the top of Cape York, and meet a bloke in one of the Indigenous communities there growing food. And by chance, the bloke driving the bus who had relocated up to Weeper, he was originally from down this way. Played footy at Old Geelong like back in the day. And it was just like the world's a very small place. So I'd say that's probably like the weird, but kind of mind-blowingly,
There you go, talking about local footy, with a bus driver in outback Australia.
Literally,
right.
All the places. Turned out we're at the same wedding a few years ago.
Right, it is a small place, particularly in agriculture. 150,000 family farms, and everybody knows everyone's business.
Yeah,
for
absolutely.
the most part. Now let's talk about. Interestingly, Humans of Agriculture is not only a platform for podcasting, but also now a powerful platform, for talent, and I guess the theme of humans itself. So keen to understand how you're expanding, your reach through the content that you're creating.
Yeah, and I think like if I look back, I'd say, I'm a very simple person, but pretty philosophical. I'd say this is probably the biggest learning I've gone through on this journey. Like when I look at agriculture, our role is to help feed 8 billion people in a way that continues to look after the planet and do it better than what we did last week, last year, last decade. When I look at the role of people in agriculture, the industry itself supports the livelihoods of 30% of the world population. So we've got a really important role. And I think when we do agriculture well, we genuinely can shape a better planet. And I'd say that's the philosophical piece of when I see ag, I see how do we unlock health, happiness and prosperity for people. And we're in a pretty golden industry to be able to do that. And I'd say for me, the learning over these conversations, I probably started at going, well, how do we support and try and shift this narrative of what the opportunities are in agriculture at I'll say macro level, probably a little bit altruistically. And I guess the learning has been, well, we've got a really important role, and we have played a really important role in sharing these stories because it's opened up perspectives and it's allowed people to see themselves in other people's career pathways or journeys or stories or moments in time. Mm-hmm. And the underlying current across all of this has been a career in agriculture, and that's what people kind of have gone on, and it's what I've gone on. So Humans of Ag really is an expression of my own career in ag and what's kind of possible. And so when I look at the role of our storytelling, we've been doing it now since 2019, sharing the stories of people who are living and breathing agriculture in all sorts of different walks of life. And they are people who have chosen ag as the vehicle that they want to have a positive impact on themselves and the people around them. And so when it came to, well, what's something tangible that we can do? And there was kind of 3 options we looked at as a business. It was either we can go down and become a content media business and really focus on that, like creating content for other companies. That's something we kind of have done on the side for the last few years, and it's supported us to get to where we are. But it's probably, I think our brand's probably stronger than just doing that.
Mhm.
The other opportunity was to go, well, do we want to really become a media business and try and take on the giants? And I think the media landscape's really changing, where you see a lot of clickbait and short termism in terms of what you're trying to do. And I think for me, like, I spend too much time at work to want to chase clicks and views and other things. And so careers was something, like, I guess I've fallen into it. I know that for me, the most beneficial thing that I've had in my career was at the age of 12, my uncle's neighbour giving me a chance to work in ag and giving me that vote of confidence that, hey, Ollie, doesn't matter who you are or where you're from, you can have a career in ag, but here's a few fundamental things. Run to get the gate, move with a bit of urgency, but always start to observe and take those insights and feed them back. And so I think for me, when I look at what I want to do with Humans of Agriculture and what we want to do now as a team as we move forward is going, how do we allow more people to step in to a career in agriculture or step up in their career in agriculture? And so fundamentally bring it back to better people, so better networked people.
Mhm.
So that comes down to our community. How do we connect them with other people who are like them? How do we help them connect them into professional development opportunities? How do we storytell? How do we show people what's possible in ag and do that through elevating people who are already in careers right now within businesses, but also showing others what a career in agriculture could look like? And then the third piece of the puzzle, as you say, is recruitment, which becomes a really tangible thing. And it becomes something that we can really measure of the impact of our storytelling, the power of our community and bringing people together is ultimately getting the best people into the best kind of agribusinesses and helping those businesses grow their talent pool, create a much bigger net of people that they can fish within, and then do it in a way that, helps these businesses develop the people within them, and ultimately those businesses will become better. They can share the stories of what they're doing through those people and those pathways, and then I think that's how we can impact the broader industry. But
Yeah, I think it's really clever. There is a huge shortage of talent across many sectors, particularly ag, skilled and unskilled labour. Previous life, I actually had a recruitment agency for many years that I built and sold. So, I mean, I tried to recruit people not only in the cities, but also in the regions and rural areas, and realised how hard it was to get people to move if they're not already there. So, like, that's a challenge, but also just the intergenerational change with ag at the moment. The next generation less interested than previous. So if you can inspire and motivate, youth or experienced operators to stick around and expand their career, I think you're solving a huge challenge to keep farmers farming and staying on the land and producing food and fibre, which is the ultimate goal, right? So I think there's a huge gap to fill. And I've got to say, in the world of recruitment, what you're doing is really innovative. It's an incredible platform to share, I think, a story for employers. So for a farm looking for a farmhand, where do you apply, right? If one of your, any farm in Australia wants a platform to be seen and heard professionally, I mean, that is a huge opportunity, I think, for any employer to get on the front foot. So I think you've built something really unique.
Yeah, and I think, well, I would say, so the conversations that I've had with the next generation, like, I would say we probably went through this stopgap, basically, of the generation above mine. So my parents' generation of times on the farm, like coming out of the 80s, were bloody tough. And then you come into the 2000s, millennium drought, etc. Like, farming was not an attractive industry. And I refuse to say how to make farming sexy, because I don't think people want to come and work in a sexy industry. They want to work in an industry that has purpose. They want to work in an industry where you can be paid well, and they want to be working with businesses that allow them to, I'll say, be themselves and express the skills, knowledge, and expertise they've got. And agriculture can offer that in so many different ways, but we've refused to tell it that way. And so I think, you say, like, why recruitment? If I look around and there's amazing people working in ag recruitment, but God, we don't do a very good job of selling the industry because we see recycled photographs. There's nothing human about it. It's a job ad that looks just,
same as
CEO role.
Correct. Yeah, you wouldn't know.
And I think, like, to your point, like, people don't want to move, but we've been in conversations with businesses, and it's like, well, actually, you might be hiring an ag professional in your business in a rural town in Australia, but actually, your worker mightn't be the most important person in the town. And so for us, as in terms of how we're approaching recruitment, what's the ecosystem that sits around it? So how do we understand what that business does for its people, for its community, for the broader region, and how do we allow businesses to be able to tell their story, but how do we also understand that?
Mm.
Because we might see whether it's farmers' wives or we're really trying to focus on, I'll say, the professional side, so skilled people in ag and businesses that see themselves and recognise their behaviours and their practices as being professionally orientated. And yeah, I think for us, like we try and take the time to learn, okay, well, what does their partner do? What does their wife do? If they're the school teacher or a nurse, like fundamentally, I might be employing that person in our town of, I don't know, say Berrigan, but
Mm.
actually if my wife is the school teacher in Berrigan, like God, actually the significance that my role has to the Berrigan Shire
Mm.
is actually through the roof because she might be a great teacher. And so this is the fabric where I think if we can understand that from a recruitment lens, all of a sudden you're not just hiring a person, you're hiring a family and you're
Oh,
hiring
totally.
skills.
Yeah, no, the impact it can have, it's more than just a job. It's a lifestyle and an impact on a local community, which is
Absolutely.
really clever. Now, what about the international labour? Do you think your platform can help attract any of the, the short-term labour workforce at all?
Yeah, I would
Yeah,
say not. We're not going
not
to
so much.
focus on
Okay,
that. No, I
gotcha.
think there's other businesses. I know
Yeah,
Agri-Talent, Agri-Labour, they specialise in that space.
yeah.
I don't see it being our area to play.
Gotcha. Okay, fair enough. Well, look, it's a great platform and idea to leverage off your I think the Humans of Agriculture brand and platform just to showcase what's on offer in the regions. So probably one of the most innovative things that I've seen in recruitment for a long time, but specifically in agriculture. So I'll be following the journey closely. Now, what about I guess off farm? You're a bit of a you've probably tasted the Australia's best wines and wine regions and food and cellar doors and pubs. Let's give our viewers and listeners some idea of your favourites. A couple of country pubs that come to mind.
Oh gosh. Okay, favourite country pub would be Farmer's Arm Hotel in Biak. I'd say that feels
Okay.
like home. It's off the back, basically the back gate of my uncle's property and a
Okay.
few properties I've worked at. Spent a lot of time. So Dorothy and the team there are extraordinary.
Very good.
And they even open Christmas Day if you're that way inclined.
Okay. You probably know who's sitting there this afternoon and what they've ordered.
Quite possibly, yeah. Used to anyway.
Right, used to it. Okay. Very good. Now, wine regions.
God, you're sticking me on topics I don't know much about.
Okay.
I'd say very unsophisticated palate.
Okay.
It's often what I get, called out on by my fiance. If I turn up with anything under like a $30 bottle of wine to a dinner, I'm being a tight ass. So I've learned that. So basically, wine over $30 is normally what I look for.
Okay, good answer. Good answer. Steak.
Steak.
Yeah, you're a meat kind of guy.
Mate, I am.
Favourite
Don't
steak?
give off that vibe. I would say, well, closer to home, I just I love the Orong Hotel. I would say the Orong
There
Hotel,
you go. Local.
yeah,
Down the road.
in Pran is
Yeah.
honestly the closest thing I reckon you can get to a country pub in Melbourne. So,
Okay.
and they have the most iconic meat raffle every Thursday night, 7 p.m. I reckon they sell hundreds of tickets every week. No doubt.
Just
Peter
for the meat
Boucher
raffle.
meats.
Right.
Give them a tray of meat each week.
Okay.
And it's on the biggest vibe. So yeah, if you're ever visiting Melbourne for footy and want a $25 steak, Orong Hotel.
There you go. I used to go there back in the day. It's been renovated. It's pretty schmick these days.
Probably hasn't changed much.
No, I was there recently, but it's we've got a lot of choice. I've got to say, like the quality of food that we have in Melbourne, and Sydney, and Australia in general is phenomenal. So
Yeah.
we shouldn't be taking that for granted. Now, I guess big picture, what's your outlook on agriculture now in Australia? You've really dug deep into the last 6 years and growing up, and you're still young. What does the future look like for Australian ag?
Yeah, it's really interesting, isn't it? I think for me, there's like a few factors that are front of mind. I would say from a macro lens, demand for Australian produce. Like we produce enough food for 75 million people. It's not a huge amount of people when you look at it in global terms. So the opportunity to get the highest quality produce to people, is definitely a tailwind for us as an industry. So I think we can do an exceptional job at that. I think from an industry standpoint, as you say, like labour is a challenge, but I think I'm an optimistic person, so I'll focus on, some of the positives. I think the technology coming in, whether it's simply looking at the role of some of the artificial intelligence to take away and support some of those office-based roles that help farmers do what they do best, is huge. I had a few conversations with the guys at Halter. Like, that technology is just mind blowing in what it can do. Same with Swarm Farm. So I think automation and robotics of what it can do at both an intensive level, but also broad scale ag is going to totally transform the way that we farm here in Australia over the next few years. And I think from the other thing I think that's front of mind is, I know you'd probably be pretty excited by it, Jono, is this huge generational wealth transfer that's going to happen in Australia over the next 20 odd years. I think, depending on where you read, somewhere between $3.5 trillion to $5 trillion will change hands. And I believe the 60 odd % of it's going to go to the next generation, who's actually going to be female. And so we're going to see a huge structural shift, I believe, in who holds the wealth and who holds the power in Australia by the year 2050. And I think that's a really exciting thing, but I also think it's a really challenging thing for farms, because if you look at a farm in the Western District, when I was born in in 1992, $450 an acre. Today, call it $8,000 an acre. If it keeps appreciating at 5 to 7%, all of a sudden by the end of my lifetime, that family farm could be worth somewhere between $1 billion and $3 billion. And that's just if we keep going on that. So there's the key challenges in how we start to look at what happens with wealth that family farms and farming in Australia has created is going to be probably one of the biggest topics of conversation in our industry. It's going to be one that already has and will continue to fracture families. And so I do think it's, how do we as an industry start to develop, I'll say, the softer skills? We're still going to need that importance of farming, but how do we look at what we're doing around how do we utilise technology, access to capital, and I'd say more importantly than anything, it's going, how do we learn to communicate in ways that allow us to achieve the objectives of the family businesses we're in or the organisations we're in. So exciting time, but still challenging too.
Yeah, no, that's very well said. Now, to all our listeners out there, if you haven't tuned in, you're probably the last one. All of Australia already knows about Humans of Ag. Check it out on all the platforms. Oli, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the show. I love your curiosity. You remind me of a bit of Stephen Bartlett, actually, a bit of a compliment.
Oh, God.
Young and curious and, leading the charge with podcasting. So let's stay in touch. Maybe we'll go for a beer and a steak at the Orong Hotel soon. And, good luck with the new venture, taking Humans of Ag to the next level.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on, John. I think you're literally the same. Curious, looking to learn, grabbing, intelligent people, me aside. But yeah, being able to grab people who you can learn off and understand more about where the industry's at, where it's heading. Good luck to you. I can't wait to see where you are in another 380 odd episodes.
Brilliant. Thanks. That's a good target to have. All right. Thanks again, Oli.
Thanks, Jono. Cheers.